Hello, everyone. We are so glad you're here. Welcome to our next installment of the Determining Decade webinar. We're starting a new series called The State of, and today it's the state of the Sierra, which is our most important mountain range here in California. I'm Liz Harvey Roberts. I'm the Chief Development Officer for our organization here in California. And I'm very happy to welcome all of you as donors and interested conservationists. And want to give a particular shout out to our Legacy Club members. I know we have a number of you joining today, and you play such an important role in remembering us in your estate plans, which provide such critical funding to our organization. So thank you so much. Today, we are welcoming two experts in the Sierra. One is Ed Smith, and he's our senior forest ecologist, and then Angel Hertzlet, who's our Sierra Nevada project manager. And they are going to be able to give us a lot of critical information about what's happening in the Sierra right now. And then you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions and chat in things that you're interested in hearing about. And if we don't get to all your questions, we will definitely summarize all of the primary questions people are asking, and we will send out information from Ed and Angel afterwards to address those questions. So please, we welcome you to ask in the Q&A function in Zoom. And if you would also, just now while we're waiting, chat in what your favorite part of the Sierra is, like where you like to go, what is special about the Sierra to you. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your interests. Okay, well, first of all, let me tell you a little bit more about me and where I am. I'm in Danville here in California. And I know that the fire season has started because we had just last week a fire that was 2 miles away. And we are very, very happy that our local fire district put it out and addressed it really quickly. It was on Mount Diablo, which is our primary state park in our area. And for any of you living in California and reading our papers, you know that we're in a drought already. We've had a terrible fire season last year, and we anticipate that it might be just as bad or worse this year. So Gavin Newsom, our governor, has put in $2 billion in his proposed budget to combat forest fire. And Ed and Angel are going to tell us a little bit about how the Nature Conservancy is using public funds, as well as private funds from all of you, to address this critical issue. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. First of all, we're gonna put a poll up to see, why do you believe wildfires are getting worse here in California? So once we have that poll up, if you just put in your answer, and then we'll all share the results. All of the above is the winner. Yes. So there's a lot of different aspects to why wildfires are getting more intense. And you're right, it's a combination of a lot of factors, some of which we've heard a lot about and some of which we're going to learn more about today. So with that, I want to let you know we have a beautiful video that we'll be sharing. And the quality of it is going to be somewhat dependent on your internet speed, but just hang with us if it slows up at all. And after that, Ed and Angel will be speaking with us. So why don't we get started?
Fire officials say it's moving so fast, it's burning at a rate of 1,000 acres per half hour.
Never in the American West has so much burned so quickly.
Every year there are forest fires here, and when you look to the horizon and you see how far away is that column of smoke, how big is that column of smoke, is my to-go bag packed, or what are my dogs doing to have my crates, I mean, is the road clear enough for a fire truck to come up? All these things go through your head, you know, and it becomes more than just a checklist, you know, it becomes, are we gonna make it through this year?
The impacts that a catastrophic wildfire can have to a community and an ecosystem are virtually unimaginable to those who haven't experienced them firsthand. It has the opportunity to devastate and to wreck a place that we hold dear, that we treasure, that we call home in a way that's irrecoverable.
It's completely diverse. The low elevations have this lush Pacific Northwest look to them with these big ferns and the madrones. And then you get into the mid elevations and it's dreamy to walk through and super open and pretty. And then the high elevations with the granite tops and the frogs and lakes. It's wild and it's rugged and it's gorgeous.
You've got rivers, you've got lakes, you've got forest, you've got open terrain, granite cliff tops. We're in the Sierra Nevada mountains. How much more beautiful can that get? So when you think of a national forest, people think of trees, and that's a major part of what we are. The other thing a national forest is water.
The rain that falls, the snow that melts, it all passes down through our forests and into our rivers. And that's actually a water supply not only for people here in these rural communities, but actually for millions of people throughout the state. So if we don't protect our forests and our resources at the headwaters, it's going to have huge impacts downstream.
To the average person, they would not see a change in the next 10 years. To a professional coming through, they would say, look at the clearing on the edge of the forest. If there's a fire that starts on the edge of the road, it's not likely to get into the forest before somebody can deal with it. If they're walking in the woods, they'll say, this looks a little different. There's wildlife openings where there weren't any. It'll be invisible to the average person and invaluable to anybody that uses this resource.
Managing our forests, furthering these efforts is not something that can wait. It's something that has to happen now.
You know, our beautiful backyard can go up in a minute, you know, as it has in many places in California. It is all of us working together that's going to help us, you know, get through this.
Wow, isn't that a gorgeous video? These are the people and places we work with every day, and we honor their dedication to this place. For those of you who may not know the Sierra Nevada, I will make a quick introduction. The Sierra Nevada is the range of light. It is a fascinating mix of granite massifs that push into the active volcanoes of the Southern Cascades, which extend up into the Pacific Northwest. The Sierra Nevada run from the Tehachapis in the south to Mount Shasta in the north, 400 miles of majestic peaks, meadows, forests, lakes, and streams. This mountain range supports a tremendous diversity of life and habitats due to the intersection of the Pacific slope to the west, the Great Basin to the east, the tropics to the south, and the temperate forests to the north. Now we're going to tell you a bit about the benefits we receive throughout the Golden State from sustaining the health of the Sierra, which at 25 million acres constitutes 1/4 of California's landmass. The Sierra is a crucial ally in our fight against climate change. This mountain range provides a unique environment supporting a global hotspot for flowers and trees that represent over 30% of California's carbon stock. Given our role on the front lines of climate change, the Sierra Nevada is not just a beautiful forest, it is an invaluable sink for carbon sequestration. I like to think of the forested watersheds of the Sierra Nevada as California's kidneys. With the installation of a world premier plumbing system years ago, now serving 40 million people, we have stressed our water supplies in California to the brink. Never before has protecting our water resources been more urgent and more challenging. The Sierra Nevada delivers 60% of California's developed water supply, feeding lakes and streams and countless species, including our own. We need to take care of our kidneys before they fail. They're also a critical economic driver for California. It's not just natural resources that depend on the health of the Sierra Nevada. These natural wonders are a critical part of the economic productivity of our state. The Sierra Nevada drives $7.8 billion in travel and recreational revenue, and they provide $3.3 billion in earnings, supporting over 52,000 jobs. And probably no surprise, this is home to an abundance of species. These forested watersheds are home to some of nature's most incredible flora and fauna, including one of the most massive organisms on the planet, the majestic giant sequoias displayed here, and half of the 7,000 plant species in California. That's high diversity, and an amazing breadth of other treasured species, like the American black bear, like the Sierra martin, and the Lahontan cutthroat trout, as well as the northern goshawk. And for all of its magnificent beauty, grandeur, and value, our forests are under threat from wildfires, insect outbreaks, and drought mortality, fueled by a changing climate. We know that we need to go bigger and move faster to outpace the changes impacting the Sierra. Time is not on our side, so we need to scale up. And we're going to talk about the critical challenges we need to solve to do that, and the creative solutions that we and our partners are using to face these massive issues at scale and head on. I now pass the baton to my colleague, Angel Hertzlet, to discuss some of our challenges and strategies.
I bet nearly every one of you joining us today knows someone who has had to evacuate their home because of a wildfire, or perhaps you yourself were evacuated. The last few wildfire seasons in California are testament enough that today's approach to forest management is insufficient. We need to practice ecological forestry, which means using a combination of ecologically based thinning and controlled or prescribed fire. Ecological forestry is already practiced on a small scale, but it must be scaled up, and that will require a significant increase in the people and collaborative partnerships to make this work happen, because unfortunately, today's resources and staffing are woefully insufficient. The Nature Conservancy is known for our convening power, our ability to gather the people closest to a problem and drive conservation solutions with those partners. So that's our first step in scaling up. We are working to bring in new partners, build new partnerships, and secure new funding sources. The French Meadows project is a great example of how TNC solves problems and scales solutions by acting as that convener, by bringing in critical partners to accomplish forest restoration in some innovative ways. The French Meadows project is located in the American River headwaters, which is recognized as a key watershed, providing water to many areas of Northern California, including Sacramento. While the Forest Service is the primary land manager in the area, and they recognize the importance in restoring resilience, they simply didn't have the personnel and funding to prioritize restoration. Then along came the King Fire in 2014, shown in our video, which burned a huge portion of the American River watershed and caused significant and expensive impacts to the water supply for Placer County and beyond. It became even more obvious that this was a critical link in our water supply and something needed to be done. So just after the fire, TNC began work with the Northern Sierra Partnership and the American River Conservancy, which is a local land trust, to accomplish a major land acquisition in the watershed in 2015. Once the private lands were protected from development and restoration had begun, it was a natural next step for us to focus on restoring the public lands within the watershed, where the fire risk was even greater. Traditionally, the Forest Service designs and implements their own projects on public land, but our goal was to supplement their capacity in order to get the restoration planned and underway in record time. So in 2016, we initiated a partnership-style restoration project on Tahoe National Forest lands surrounding the French Meadows Reservoir with the water utility, the county, the Forest Service, the local land trust, and a research institution. We worked as a nimble partnership to design, finance, and implement a premier restoration plan for the 28,000-acre American River Headwaters project. We hired contractors and we worked with specialists to design the restoration using thinning and prescribed burning. We worked in partnership with the Forest Service to conduct the environmental analysis, and we received approval to begin implementation, all on a timeline about 3 times faster than usual. Fast forward to today, and we are now 3 years into the restoration work. We've thinned over 3,000 acres and started our prescribed burning, completing 64 acres last week with more fire planned for today. As we implement, we and our partners monitor the results to learn how our forest health treatments are impacting water availability, tree growth, changes in forest structure, and other metrics. And we're working to secure funding to finish the restoration. The Forest Service manages the majority of land in the Sierra Nevada, and it's underfunded and often stretched really thin, battling long seasons of wildfires. TNC can bring together partners, take on contracts, and employ a partnership approach to get the job of forest restoration done. We have the experience and expertise, and with the compounding challenges of climate change, wildfires, and declining forest health, we are working hard to increase both the pace and scale of forest restoration, and that means summoning more resources and onboarding more partners. Across the Sierra Nevada, there is broad consensus that we need to move quickly and work at scale. But is it simply a matter of treating as many acres as we can get to? Not every acre is equal in terms of the benefits it can deliver if we restore it. So it's essential that we are laser focused on doing the work in the right places. With limited resources and time running out, we can't afford to be anything less than super strategic about where we work and what that work translates into in terms of improving human safety, reducing fire risk, restoring habitat, safeguarding carbon and water supply, and more. We need to focus our efforts where they can make the biggest impact. To zero in on making the biggest impact possible, to deliver that maximum return on investment, we are utilizing the best data possible and sophisticated analytical tools to model where our restoration can have that outsized impact, and to ensure the restoration we design integrates the latest science. And the other challenge is that things change. We are working in a very dynamic system, so we need to be flexible and adaptable to those changes. Our North Yuba project is a perfect example of working at the landscape scale to focus our restoration efforts where they will have that outsized payoff for people and nature alike. Based on our success with the French Meadows project, we were invited to co-create an even larger restoration project with the Forest Service and 7 other partners. We've been working together for the last 2 years to design a restoration plan for the North Yuba watershed, a whopping 275,000 acres in size, that improves community safety, enhances wildlife habitat, safeguards water resources, and improves forest health and fire dynamics. Our North Yuba Forest Restoration Project is the largest in the Sierra Nevada. Working at this unprecedented scale requires us to be innovative and create new approaches to planning, funding, and implementing, all while ensuring that the acres we do treat have the highest return on investment in terms of their restoration values. I'll walk you through 3 key components of our approach. First, we are using the highest quality data sets and analytical models available. We live in the age of information, and that's true in the conservation world too. We have access to unparalleled amounts of information, much of it remotely sensed using airplanes and satellites, which inform our understanding of the conditions on the ground. Our data is summarized at the 1 meter scale across 275,000 acres. We have both breadth and depth. We are using sophisticated models that TNC and others have developed, which help us to quantitatively understand the structural conditions of yesteryear's more resilient forests and the impacts we can expect to encounter later in this century due to climate change. We're making the most of these data sets and models to design a restoration plan that will help us to transition the landscape to a more resilient condition while reducing fire risk and increasing community safety. We're focusing our restoration on the acres that will have that greatest return on investment, not in terms of money, but in terms of building resilience. Second, we are designing our restoration plan to withstand the test of time. The plan is intended to guide management for the next 2 decades, so it must be both durable and flexible. To accomplish this, we are using condition-based management, which means we are developing decision trees to guide the restoration from current conditions to resilient conditions using if-then statements that will guide treatment according to the local conditions. This is a key innovation because the restoration plan covers 275,000 acres and it will take decades to implement. So we know that conditions will change over time. After we develop this flexible plan, we'll use field surveys to confirm site conditions, and those surveys will be sequenced in step with the restoration schedule, instead of what's typically done, which is surveying the whole landscape before even the first acre of restoration begins. This staged approach will be much more effective, not to mention more cost efficient. A third major component of our approach is continuous monitoring and adaptive management. It's essential that we work with our partners to closely monitor how our restoration progresses so we can learn from our actions and make management adaptations as we go along. We understand that rigorous multi-party monitoring will be critical to our restoration success, as it will help us to improve our management while building public trust and transparency in the process. So to sum things up, our French Meadows project helped us to establish a track record, build relationships, and find innovations in funding, planning, and implementing. With the North Yuba project now underway, we are putting all of that great learning to work to truly rise to the occasion and innovate how restoration work is done so we can work at scale, because nature and we cannot wait. I will pass it back to Ed to explain a final challenge in scaling up our forest restoration work and what we as TNC are doing to solve it.
Great. So you've heard from Angel that we need more people and resources. We have to be as strategic as possible to be successful. And we need to reinvent restoration operations to be efficient and effective. The electric third rail is a communication challenge. Conservation is fraught with historical hangovers from outdated science and beliefs. Smokey Bear, remember old Smokey, told us and continues to tell us that all fire is bad and must be extinguished immediately. And for decades, we equated any tree thinning with logging and the timber industry, and the false belief that more trees are always better than fewer trees. This is the communications challenge. Our solutions, safely reintroducing fire and thinning overgrown forests, can look a whole lot like the problems that we're solving to the untrained eye. And the nuance is all in how we implement thinning and prescribed fire. Good fires prevent bad fires, and thinning can be a beneficial form of logging. This means that we need to build trust across a range of stakeholders: voters, communities, partners, legislators, and community activists. So we work transparently, deploying the best available science and communicating that our adaptive management strategy based on real-time monitoring and data analysis allows us to react and adapt to changes and opportunities within a landscape level conservation project. Let's take the example of managing forests, specifically the idea of using prescribed fire to thin overgrown forests to their natural state. Native Americans have been managing the forests in the Sierra Nevada for millennia. They gather the forest bounty by collecting pine nuts, using small diameter wood for homes, for hunting implements and fishing, and for canoes and cradleboards. And they use fire to clear brush and maintain healthy hunting grounds, often setting flame to brush as they migrated downslope from the uplands in the fall. And they continue to burn for resilience. They understand that a healthy forest allows for natural fires that don't lay waste to entire landscapes as today's wildfires do. And the science and our experience are clear that these overly dense forests are highly combustible, a string of disasters waiting to happen. Last year, we saw nearly 4.5 million acres burn across California, with 6 of the largest 20 fires in recorded history, nearly equaling the area burned by the other top 14 fires that have burned since 1932, when records began being collected. Ironically, scientists have estimated that on average, about 4.5 million acres a year is the level that burned historically across California for thousands of years. The same record we set last year is typically what burned across California prior to 1849. But fires are now different in character. They're burning too hot and they're having disastrous effects. We think this beautiful creature, the California spotted owl, is a great example of where the latest and best available science needs to inform present and future management, rather than relying on our past paradigm and understanding of owl habitat. Academic researchers have been studying California spotted owls in the Sierra Nevada for over 23 years. The prevailing belief used to be that any proactive forest management of spotted owl habitat was disruptive to the owls and would have a negative effect. The idea was essentially that the best plan was to do nothing, to leave them alone and their habitat untouched. But that interpretation of how to protect owls was tragically proven wrong in 2014. The 2014 King Fire near French Meadows burned about 100,000 acres in a week, with about 50% of the area burning at high severity. The habitat of the spotted owl was severely damaged, with the fire intensity fueled by dense trees and an overgrown forest floor and whipped to a frenzy by drought and high winds. The imperiled California spotted owl stopped using the severely burned habitat immediately. And even after 7 years regrowth, the owls are not returning to their homes. The devastating results on owls convinced risk-averse owl researchers and managers that the long-term potential gains of fuel reduction through thinning and prescribed fire, like we're talking about, far outweigh the short-term disruptions to owls of modifying their habitat. This was a game-changing moment for some very conservative researchers. We are now helping to prioritize for restoration ancient forest habitat that owls prefer and need to persist. The plight of the spotted owl underscores the need to lead from the front and ensure that we are driving the messaging and public education campaigns to garner support for the science that we know can help us avoid the mistakes of past forest management that focused on a hands-off approach. We work with the latest science and scientists and co-invest in monitoring how owls and their habitat respond to treatment in the future. Okay, so let's wrap it up. We know we need to scale our conservation efforts. Climate change is getting bigger and faster, and we need to outpace it to do what we can to save this critical resource. The Nature Conservancy has been working in the Sierra Nevada for about a dozen years. We're proud of our accomplishments and of the strategic partnerships we have built to get the job done. But the pace of climate change and the related damage megafires are causing are clear evidence that we need to scale our conservation work even faster. As you can see from this slide, we have taken huge steps, starting at 2,300 acres at Independence Lake, then 28,000 acres of French Meadows, and now 275,000 acres in the North Yuba watershed. We are co-leading regional planning across 2.4 million acres in the Lake Tahoe area through 2030, with the ultimate goal of exporting our innovative solutions so we can all collaboratively restore 9 million acres, approximately 1/3 of the Sierra Nevada, over the next 30 years. Today, we've outlined 3 problems we need to solve to get to our goal: expanding the people and partnerships we need to accomplish the work, scaling our tools and monitoring to ensure we are maximizing the return on investment, and investing in the communication and education efforts to ensure the best available science is being deployed and lessons learned are relayed through a megaphone. All of these problems have one thing in common: we can only solve them together. We thank you for your time and joining us today.
And with that, we're going to say goodbye. So it's been great having you. Please look at your future invitations and join us for future state ofs. And in the meantime, stay safe. All right. Bye-bye.